Hey everyone, Blaq is back. How are you doing today? So today we're going to be discussing what is the social sexual marketplace, or SSMP, and what is its history. All right, we'll be right with you. Hey everyone, and welcome to another Black Unicorn Red Pill production. I want to thank you everyone who's tuned in today, and so let's get right to it. What is the social sexual marketplace, and what is its history? And so I'm calling it the social sexual marketplace because it's often known as the sexual marketplace or the social marketplace. So it's a bit of both, the social sexual marketplace. This is the space in which the mating game happens. And depending on where you are, it is the world. It is the balance between the males and the females. And based upon your sexual power, it can determine your social power, which is why they're combined. Okay, so in the basic of this is the mating game, the mating dance. You go to any nightclub, right? You can see it, especially, right? The males and the females and how they operate, and which guy gets to walk in the room and get his pick of the women versus the guys who have to struggle and fight or sit are the wallflowers, right? This is that marketplace. Tinder, I own Plenty of Fish, Facebook, Instagram. These are all examples of this. And when someone says you're a 10, you're a 5, you're a 4, this is what we're talking about. So in future videos, I'm going to break down what these hierarchies are within it, how the men and the women are, and how we date and marry, choose to date and marry, and how to figure out where you are. But first, I want to discuss the history of this space, because the space right now has changed so much that the history is important to know because it has changed. And how we interact with each other has changed as a result. So historically, I'm speaking about Europeans here because I am speaking in American English. I'm going to make a guess that most of my viewership speaks English, understands me in English, and therefore you are either in England or your culture has been heavily influenced by England, which was Europeans. Okay, so speaking on this from a European standpoint, because their view has kind of colonized a lot of other cultures. I'm very acutely aware, fascinatingly, that a lot of other tribes and cultures have completely different sexual marketplaces and sexual hierarchies than what the general status quo is. But as we red pill, because you were blue pilled into the standard. So this is the history of the European standard. And so, generally speaking, women were property of men, but not every man. A girl was the property of her father until she was married and she became the property of her husband. And her ability to marry was based upon her value, and her value was heavily tied to her chastity, her virginity, her virtue. Okay? So, this is really important to know because like most men, right, they don't want to marry a woman who has had sex. Her value has dropped. She's promiscuous. That means there's a woman you may not be able to trust to not sleep around while you're married. And men may have to travel, be out of town for lengths of time, who knows what, depending on his current status, or he just doesn't care. A great example of this in the European culture is the film like The Duchess. Great kind of want to hear how Europeans deal with this. One of your reasons for wanting virgins is like, she's a woman who she's not sexually promiscuous, she doesn't really care about sex that much, doesn't value it. And so if you don't want to give it to her, she's not going to look for it, right? And then so you can ensure that the children that you're raising are your own. This is the value, and this came out of agriculture, which we discussed previously when we discussed feminism and the history of human interaction. It used to be when it was nomadic, hunter-gatherer, chastity wasn't looked at different ways, and different tribes had their different values. But where we are now after agriculture, the man's putting a lot of toil into what he has. He gives it to his children. He wants to make sure that those children are his. So, social laws were in place. Social laws in place to denigrate women who had sex, right? You had to be a virgin. You had to be pure. But this is where this comes from, because women by nature, we are submissive, we are compliant, but it depends on who we submit to. And when society and the government, or mainstream society, the TV, takes over raising our children, our daughters, society gets to tell us women what to value. It used to be our fathers, our mothers, and so our mothers and fathers would tell us what to value, and they told us to value our virginity, and so we did. We're compliant. And if a woman was not a virgin, she probably couldn't marry, or she'd have to marry a lower quality man who was probably poor, and then so she would have to work, and she would spend her life being, or she just wouldn't ever marry and have to go work to support herself, because her father would just kick her out and get rid of her. Like, you don't follow the rules, you have sex. This is where old maid came from, because that's where maids came from, some of them. Sometimes, a pure, virtuous girl who just came from a poor stock married a poor man and she had to be a maid. But other times, she maybe was from middle class, poor stock, and she had a little boyfriend, fooled around, or sadly, she, was raped, molested as a child. List goes on, otherwise not a virgin, and so she became an old maid. And then later, a spinster when she would work to spin yarn, a thread. And so she had to work. So her value was tied to chastity. Women who were high value did not have to work, usually, unless they were in the poor caste. And that's a social element here. Then legally, there were statutory rape laws. Now, rape was always illegal. So rape is illegal, and rape was mostly illegal because took away a woman's value. If a man has, a couple of daughters and he's paying for them because they're his property, he's responsible for them, he wants to marry them off, and then some guy comes and rapes her, he now she can't be married, right? And so the laws against rape were designed to keep men from raping, because clearly women don't want to be raped. There's also some cultures' views of consent. Can a woman consent? It's assumption that all women want consent, that women were loose and easy. Another discussion for another day, if ever we'll discuss it, because it's barely relevant, but it is worth knowing the wickedness of women or not, right? But generally speaking, statutory rape laws also existed for the purposes of trying to legally coerce men into marrying their daughters. Now, we have this idea of adulthood at 18 that usually was for men, because women were never considered citizens, right? Historically, on the law book. And so, having any form of sex, consensual sex, which was is a distinction in statutory rape. If a say 20-year-old man was to rape a 14-year-old girl, it's rape. It's rape. She didn't want it. It's rape. But if he has consensual sex with a 14-year-old girl, it's assumed that he coerced her, that she doesn't know better. She's young, frivolous, wickedness of women, or just susceptible, hormonal, and she doesn't know better. And so this guy coerced her for sex. And now this man, the dad, may have had some great guy lined up who was going to do well for the family with this marriage, because marriage is a business arrangement. But here comes this dude who just ruined everything. And so the law was designed to make men marry these girls or go to jail. That was it. You slept with my daughter, you got her pregnant, which is usually how you found out, You got her pregnant, and you need to marry her, you're going to jail. And you're going to be labeled a predator because you're out here, crude terms for certain kinds of guys who like to get young women while they're, too young to know better, especially like virgins. We used to call them cherry hounds, bloodhounds, or he's hounding. because he's sniffing out like a dogging, these young women, these girls who are impressionable, right? And so there were strict laws against it, and there used to be strict laws against adultery as well. And there still is belief that, you could get killed messing with a man's wife. And it used to be perfectly legal because a man is defending his property. His wife is his property. That's his womb. That's his land he bought. And the fruits of that land need to be his. And if someone's planting their seeds on his soil, and now he has to till that soil, and it's not until the tree is grown, he might realize that's not the tree I planted. Somebody's been in here planting my soil, right? Planting in my soil. And so that's where laws against adultery were very strict. And it used to be when women were property, like the law, that law hasn't changed. What the law has changed is that women are no longer seen as property of their husbands. And so a man still has the right to defend his property. But that usually is like, an intruder. As in, if a man walks on another man's property line, he can shoot him. It used to be the same if he was in his wife. And he could serve some cases where he could even, if he could prove to some extent the paternity, that this, hey, this guy is blonde and blonde hair and blue eyes. I've got brown hair, brown eyes. My wife has brown hair, brown eyes. My second son is blonde hair, blue eyes. I caught them sleeping together. This man, my second child is his. I need his money. I'm taking his money. I'm taking his possessions because I've been paying for a child that isn't mine, right? And you don't want to break up the family at this point, but you're probably not going to treat that child the same. So this is the history. And this is the law. These were legal laws on paper designed to protect, to regulate the sexual marketplace. And we have like the Scarlet Letter, things like that. We used to label people as these names would further regulate that social regulation of the sexual marketplace. And then that would affect you socially, the social sexual marketplace, the SSMP. Then you have laws of nature, which is pretty much pregnancy, right? And hymens as a representation of virginity. So if you're a single man and you want to have sex, there were 3 ways you could have sex in the regulated marketplace. You need to go get a wife. You need to get a prostitute, pay for a prostitute, or be very, very careful about sleeping with some other man's daughter or wife, right? And the first 2 require money. And the third, maybe charm and skill, right? So you, as a man, this is why you had to go work, go make money, get prowess and status, so you could have your pick of the best wife, and the husband, the father who decided if you could marry his daughter would allow you to marry his daughter. It doesn't matter you like her, it doesn't matter if she likes you or not. Dad decides if you two get married, and dad, who is smart, thinks logically and says, I need a man who's going to protect my daughter, who's going to provide for her and make sure she has a good life. And also, can it benefit me? And so there's a reason this was the incentive for men to have money. You need to have a lot of money and wealth and status to get your best pick of the best women for marriage, or you just need to make some money to get a prostitute. But eventually you probably just, maybe you want to stop paying for a prostitute or not, but you want better sex, high quality sex, or children, all right? You want to have some children, and so let me get my wife, all right? You can only get sex or children from your wife, especially children. Maybe you'll be able to get sex from prostitutes, and prostitutes are few and far between, hopefully. Usually, right? Because you don't want to be a prostitute. And this is where some women were relegated to that. If they like sex, if they enjoy sex. It's why the cult, this bad idea of being such a whore, and a whore for this, and you're an attention whore, you're a money whore. A woman who will debase herself or lower her value for sex or attention or money, material things, and not the spiritual or the social things like respect, class, respecting class, essentially, right? A woman who enjoyed sex is not, generally speaking, was not seen as appropriate for a wife. And And this would be a concern, even if you got a woman who was pure and virtuous. Now, every man's dream is to get a girl who's a virgin, but who's just super hot. You know, super wants sex all the time. Every time. That's a man's dream, right? But only with you, because she's a virgin. She doesn't want anybody else. But usually if a woman really wants sex, she's just gonna go get it. There's somebody out there who, you know, men will sniff that out on her and will go get her. And then now her value's been dropped. She enjoys sex. She might as well get paid for it because she loves it. And then obviously right to sleep with another man's wife. You had to be very clever, though once you got caught, if you lived to tell the tale, you were given that scarlet A, you know, literally or socially. You might be jailed. Right? You have to move town, and this is why rogue single men aren't trusted historically, weren't trusted, and socially still there's a level of power that a man just simply cannot get past while single, right? And it's because of this history. You know, a single man, he just, fine, I'll just move to a new town where no one knows me and no one knows that I'm an adulterer, and it would take him years to gain trust if no one could vet him back home. Because what did you do? Why'd you leave? Right? So I hope I explained the history of the sexual social marketplace, primarily focusing on the European culture, European cultural mindset. So I thank you everyone for tuning in. There'll be more videos. Please comment, subscribe. I'd love to hear your comments. Please stay tuned for more videos on this as we continue to break down and discuss the sexual marketplace and understanding your value. All right? Au revoir.